Hello everyone, and welcome to Art Salon. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce Mary Jo Aagerstoun. She is a person who has devoted her career to activism in art. And since coming to South Florida, that's become eco art activism. Mary Jo was a student of art history who got a PhD from the University of Maryland and had a major concentration in activist art of the 1980s and 1990s, and also was a student of the art of the 19th century in the United States and I think France. She has become involved in working with the environment and finding ways to use art to physically help the environment and to do kind of demonstration projects, I think is the way I would say it, to show that art can be creative and exciting and also functional in the sense of making our world a better place. With that, I will introduce Mary Jo Aagerstoun.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Ellie and Jerry, for doing this. I mean, it's just really helping to take the level of culture up many, many notches since you started. I'm thrilled to be part of this and, of course, thrilled to have Ellie involved in the project that we're doing in Delray, and I'm going to get into that very shortly. I've given it this title, my talk this title, and the last line is not an afterthought. I believe that activist art is a form of sculpture and that it utilizes social systems as the material. So those of us who've studied studio art understand that sculpture is usually considered either additive or subtractive, correct? So those of us who have studied fiber art consider that kind of sculpture to be weaving things together. So if I were to choose a type of sculpture that I think social sculpture is, I would choose fiber art, because what you essentially are doing is you are weaving together social structures, institutions, and so forth. So what does it mean to say that HighWaterLine is a social sculpture? These two pictures are of Joseph Beuys, who was a German artist. He was a member of the Luftwaffe during World War II and was shot down in Russia and was saved from the snow by some local people. A lot of his work has to do with that. But one of the things that happened to him in the 60s was he began to be concerned about how society was moving forward. And so he began to do these performances. And on the left, you will see a performance that he did in Holland, or the Netherlands, I should say, in the swampland that is on the edge of the Zuider Zee. The reason that he did that was because the Dutch government was about to drain a lake. Is this beginning to sound familiar? Draining lakes, draining things. And they were draining it for, and again, does this sound familiar? For things called polders, which are fields, agricultural fields. And he believed at the time, way ahead of his time, that that was not the way to go, that we needed to preserve our wetlands, we needed to do something about it. So he and some of his artist friends actually went down and did a whole performance by walking into the mud and then swimming in the water. And it got a huge amount of publicity. So those are going to be kinds of things I'm talking about. How does social sculpture utilize media, for example? It isn't just a question of getting media, which we know that that's an advertising approach. But using media is the way social sculptors do. On the right is a very famous project called 7,000 Oaks. And for those of us who are involved in environmental things here in Florida, we understand that we need to have many more canopy trees. West Palm Beach itself only has 14% canopy trees, and we need 45% just to deal with the kind of carbon dioxide that we're throwing off of our buildings. So you can see we have a big job ahead of us. Well, Joseph Beuys did this project in Kassel, which is famous for its documenta exhibitions that come up every 5 years. And he did it specifically there because he wanted it to be seen as an art project, not as a planting tree project, which is something that cities and counties and states do on an ongoing basis. But when an artist takes the act of planting trees and does it in a very specific place, like a place that is an art place, like Kassel, then it gets another kind of meaning. There's a whole other meaning that comes with it. He called this social sculpture because essentially what he was doing was causing something to happen in the polity, in the social structures, as a result of doing the action. Those pieces were done in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Joseph Beuys died in 1986, and the 7,000 Oaks project actually was completed by his son after his death as a memorial to him. Outside, you will find a bibliography that I've done tonight because I did a bibliography. Why? Because I want to try to really drive home the idea that the practice that we're going to be demonstrating in Delray on April 25th, the high water line, comes with a very long history, at least more than half a century, going back to middle 1960s and before. So I wanted to give heft to the idea that activist art is not a Johnny-come-lately. It's been around for a long time. It's been developing. It's been evolving. And it's also being done on lots of different areas of a spectrum. So you have anything from social practice, which is really kind of sociology or social work art. Looks like social work, talks like social work, walks like social work, but it's an art project in much the same way that Joseph Beuys has planted trees or swum in a lake. So social practice would be on the sort of more, let's all get together and do something good for all of us area. And then on the other end of the spectrum would be the confrontational ones like the yes men. The yes men are some fabulous artists that impersonate people like BP or EPA, and they go into situations and they pretend to be officials and they make very important announcements that are things that that particular institution should be doing but are not doing. So that's all on the other end of the spectrum. So high water line. On the left, you can see a woman crossing the street with a contraption, and behind the contraption is stretching a line, which is a light blue line. And this is Eve Mosher, an artist who lives in Brooklyn. Back in 2006-7, she became concerned about the fact that we were not paying as much attention as we should to climate change. And so she came up with this social sculpture idea, which is that she drew a 75-mile line across Brooklyn and the Lower East Side in Manhattan. Took her 6 months. And all along the way, she had conversations with people. People would come up to her and say, "What the heck are you doing? This is really weird." And she said, "Yes, I'm doing this because this line represents the 100-year flood line, 10 feet above sea level." Now what she says on her website is, "I wish I were not right." Because Sandy came and it surpassed the water level almost twice. 18 feet was the high water line in Sandy. So in essence, she's also a prophet, isn't she? Which is a wonderful idea about artists, that we can be prophets, we can prophesy. This was all based in science. This is a nice map that she did. You can see the green, the whole green area here is what's going to be underwater at 10 feet at the 100-foot level. She did this with scientists, which is another great way that artists engage social sculpture, is by pulling from the scientific institutions and engaging them so that the work actually is based in science. So they were scientists from Columbia University that she worked with to develop the line, and GIS people GIS being Geographical Information Services. It's a kind of computer program where you can layer maps on top of each other. And so you can learn a lot if you layer maps that have different meanings and you look down and you can see where the things kind of come together. It's very, very cool. So that's how this map was developed. Some of the things that she did other than doing the line and talking to people along the line in subsequent locations, she's now done it in 4 cities, New York, Philadelphia, Bristol, Miami, and now it's going to be in Delray. And the same year, in 2015, she's also going to do one in Boston. So it's now spreading over the world. So you can see, again, thinking about social sculpture as a way to knit things together, to weave together processes and institutions and contacts. And the idea of nets, networking, I think is something we can think about also as the way social sculpture works. The other thing that happens is money is coming in their way. The Miami high water line was done in 2013, and they just got a $100,000 grant from Kresge to do additional planning for resiliency planning. The work doesn't stop. When she stopped drawing the line in New York City, the work didn't stop. So that's the other thing we think about when we think about social sculpture. It's something that continues through time. The net keeps building, it keeps moving, it's very eclectic, very motion-oriented, very time-oriented, and it's engaging the money part, the economy, the economic aspect as well. So we decided to do it in Delray. So this is how it all started. Up here, I went to a Sea Rise symposium in last June, and I met several people there, including the 2 people who were organizing the Climate Action Coalition. And in talking to them, I found out that they were doing this Florida Earth Festival in Boca Raton, and that they were going to be focusing on sea rise. So I made a suggestion to them at that conference. Hey, there's this really cool artist in New York, Mosher, who does the high water line. And I think you need that in your project. So they got very excited and started thinking about it. And so they went out and got some money. They got a grant from the Florida Humanities Council and also from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Boca Raton. And we started working with Eve. Then these people up here, Florida Earth Festival, had tried to get John Morgan, who is the sustainability coordinator for the city of Delray Beach, involved last year at their Florida Earth Festival, but they couldn't work it out because he was going to be traveling or something. But they had done their homework, and so when they got the money, they called up John and they said, hey John, we got money, we want to do this, and we'd like to do it in Delray. And he said, fabulous. So he then got on board. So we got the whole city of Delray involved. And about that time, after the grants had come in, I said to the organizers, this is too great an opportunity. We need to embroider. We need to get more layers here. And the reason for that is because we want this effort to continue and move. And my whole thing is, let's get the arts involved in all kinds of efforts. Let's get them involved in environmental issues, protecting our land and our water. Let's get involved in all different kinds of issues. And what is more important to Florida than the issue of climate change, the effects of climate change, and sea rise? So it seemed to me that in addition to parachuting in a New York artist, we should also engage our local artists. And how could we do that? So my idea was we need to have, at particular locations along the line, some arts collaborations that will be done by local artists in order to underscore what the line means. So for example, when the line is drawn, it's drawn during the day, and it disappears at night. So maybe we should figure out a way to light the line so that we have a longer period of time when people can visit the line. We might want to have something happening that would draw people to parts of the line and parts of the city that they might not go to. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I go to Delray, since I'm not there, you know, I'm on Atlantic Avenue or I'm in Pineapple Park. I'm not wandering through the neighborhoods. But to understand the implications of sea rise, you really need to get out into the neighborhoods and understand. Okay, so then the next part is, okay, we got all this involved. We got the artists involved now. So now what? We need more artists who know how to do this kind of thing here so that we don't have to keep shipping people in from other places. So I called up my friends at Beautiful Trouble, Beautiful Solutions, which is an organization that came out of the Occupy movement in New York City. And they are currently very committed and doing training on activist art for artists in particular locations so that we can, in local areas, have cadre of artists that know how to do this kind of thing. I mean, not just high water line, but, you know, who knows what could come out of artists' minds if they begin to think about their practice in a different way. So we're going to have a workshop, which is going to be an introduction to activist art, because you can't teach people how to do this in 2 hours. If you think about those of you who went to studio school, if you think about how long it took you to get a BFA or an MFA, you know, I mean, we think we can shortcut that, and because artists already have that training, so we need to kind of layer on top of it the kinds of things that people need to know in order to move their practice or do a different kind of practice, maybe not forever, maybe not all the time, but when it's necessary to be able to come up with the ideas and execute them. So we're going to have a workshop. And we hope that that then is going to lead to more artists involved in the Climate Action Coalition. So now we're integrating art into the Climate Action Coalition on a long-term basis. So it isn't just one-shot deal. It isn't just, we're doing the high water line, it's over now, we'll go on to the next event. No, we want to have integrated into the Climate Action Coalition. And what I would like to see, of course, is not just integration into, but leadership from artists. Because my experience is that when artists are in leadership of these kinds of things, beautiful, wonderful things happen. Because art speaks to the heart. And there's nothing like persuasion than what happens when artists get involved in making something happen. So there we are. So we're back to the Climate Action Coalition. So that's how it works. So this is a diagram of a social sculpture. These are all the elements that are included. And this is the sculpture right here. And it has all of these implications, and you can see the kinds of interactions that happen all around it. So this is a disclaimer that all of us, when we speak about this, have to give. You know, this is the source of our funding. And these are our community partners and sponsors so far. Again, all of that are elements of the sculpture. They are threads in the tapestry that's being woven. So this is how it's going to work. The Florida Earth Festival occurs on April 18th and 19th. And they're going to have workshops for people who are going to be walking the line, actually creating the line. People are going to be coming up to them and they're going to be saying, what the heck are you doing? You really have to know what you're talking about. So you need to be trained about the history of Delray and what parts of Delray are most at risk. You need to have the scientific explanation of why we chose the line in its location. And you need to have some kind of introduction to activist art to move forward. So that's all happening on April 18th and 19th at the Florida Earth Festival in Boca. And I can tell you I'm going to be doing a lot of PR and publicity around that, because I think that's the most important thing we can do at that event to try to move ourselves forward and make sure that artists are included in the overall Climate Action Coalition. And then on April 25th, these are the things that are going to happen. It starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, and it'll go until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. During the daylight hours, the line will be drawn. And there will also be arts collaborations, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Neighborhood engagement. We're going to be reaching out to neighborhoods and engaging them in the drawing of the line and other kinds of activities. There will be youth involvement with the schools. There will be information and education that will be developed. There's going to be a brochure. There's a whole website that's just now going online already to get ready for this. So why did we choose Delray Beach? First of all, South Florida. I mean, everybody's been reading the papers, right? Watching TV. We're at risk, big time. But most of the attention has been paid to the problems that are going to happen in Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe. And Miami's going to be underwater, but we're going to be fine. We have high enough land. So we wanted to make sure that people understood that that was not the case, that we are at risk, and not only along the coast. There are other places that are going to be at risk as well, including our water supply. And so the reason why we chose Delray Beach is because we have 38 municipalities in Palm Beach County. Delray Beach and Boynton Beach are the only ones that have signed the Mayor's Compact. All the rest of them have not yet signed it. We have a climate compact that has been worked on for years. Everybody has signed off on it. All the counties have signed off on it. But now it's time for planning. Now it's time for getting real about what needs to be done. So the fact that Delray is one of the coastal cities that has already begun to plan, signed the mayor's document, and has a task force called the Rising Waters Task Force that's beginning to talk about what it is we do about this situation. So we wanted to go someplace where something was already being done. So again, this is part of social sculpture. You try to figure out its strategy. It's like, where do you go to make the most impact, and then have that then be a model for the next thing that happens so that it continues. So the Delray routes, there are going to be 3 lines drawn. The total number of miles drawn will be 15 miles, because that's what we have funding for and chalk for. And so we're going to do it in 3 locations. An area that intersects Atlantic Avenue on the Barrier Island, an area that intersects Atlantic Avenue on the mainland, and another area in what's called the Western Settlement, which is the historical African American community and a low-income area in the city. And that has a very different reason for inclusion. The 2 down by the coast are directly affected by sea rise already. Many neighborhoods are already flooding at high tide and king tide. King tide comes in October every year. So those are the ones where people are going, yeah, it's happening. I mean, my basement, my first floor, I have to move all my furniture up to the 2nd floor, because everything gets wet. So that's already beginning to happen. Out near I-95, kind of, if you know Delray at all, starting at Lake Ida and going east about 10, 15 blocks, there is a whole area that is subject to extreme flooding. So this is the map that was drawn for us by the FAU GIS specialist. And what it shows you is the yellow area is under 1 foot at high tide. The red area is 1 to 2 feet above sea level at high tide. And the green is 2 to 3 feet above sea level. So this is the bridge. So you can see, this is kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? You would think that the water would be, if it's called sea rise, the water should be coming here. But we have a very ancient dune that comes all along the coastline here. So all these houses, are above 4 feet, but still 4 feet. I mean, it's still, not much. So this is where the line is going to be drawn, along here and along here. Those are the ones on the coast. And then the one out near Frog Alley, or the Western Settlement as it's called, is here, and the line is going to be drawn like this, which means that everything behind it is subject to extreme flooding. And that's because it's not because of, well, it is kind of because of Lake Ida, but it's also other things. The way our canals work, canals take the excess water when we have major rain events, and they go into the canals. and they operate on gravity. So the water kind of goes into the canals and then it flows out into the ocean. Well, if the ocean comes up and the water's trying to flow out, it can't get out. So what's it going to do? It's going to back up. So we didn't want to just do the logical thing, which is everybody knows sea is coming on shore from the ocean, but we wanted to show the effects of sea rise and climate change back here as well. So the local artist high waterline collaborations these are the criteria that we're using for developing it, and they're still developing. So we have some ideas of things that we're going to do, and I'm going to talk about them, but we're also open to others. We want them to be located along the high water line where the most impact will be felt. So it won't just be anywhere. We'll be picking places to put these art interventions, I'm calling them, at places where we want people to go. And then we'll publicize them and say, go to the art intervention there, and then you will have someone there talking and handing out brochures in addition to having the art event. We want to tie it in with the character and history of the neighborhood. We're going to be doing some interviews with local people, and those are going to be online. People will be able to access those. When they go to those locations, they'll be able to access the video of the interview. We want to illuminate the line at night. We want to draw participants and spectators away from Atlantic Avenue and so that they understand the implications for our neighborhoods. We want to make the data and the history visible. We want to engage local residents, and we want to activate Delray and Palm Beach County artists and get them involved in wanting to do more to learn about how to do this practice. So one of the things we came up with, thank you very much, we have Sharon Koskoff here. Sharon came up with this great idea, which is to engage Delray artists to do small tiles that will be fired, and they will be located and hidden with hints. So people can go and find them, and when they find, and they'll have some kind of message on it about sea rise and the high water line. And when they find them, they'll be asked to take a selfie with the piece and post it online. So we're going to have a very vibrant and very rich online presence for this project as well. We're also very fortunate to be working with Dale Andre. Dale is a choreographer and a professor at Miami-Dade College in Miami, and she does the National Water Dance every year around the country. She enlists people and dancers and regular community members who are not dancers to form movement choirs to do dances that are related to water and to water bodies. And so when I found out when we first started thinking about doing the arts collaborations, I immediately thought of Dale. And I said, how fabulous would it be if we used Dale to help light the line at night? So the performances are actually going to be at night. And how it's going to work, and over here you see the blue sticks. So we'll be giving each dancer or member of the movement choir, which will be both professional dancers, dance students, and then people from the various neighborhoods participating. And the idea is the dancers will line up along the Intracoastal on both sides. And then I'm not going to go to the other map that shows the other area, but the idea is you go back to where the water is coming into the neighborhoods, which is here. And then there will be like 2 or 3 dancers stationed at each street all the way down. And at an appointed time, they will start moving with their light sticks along the roads up to the line. And when they get there, they will stand in the line for several minutes. For photo ops, I'm hoping to get a drone to take a video of this whole thing happening. So essentially, we will be mimicking the action of the water. The dancers will be moving to the high water line, just like the water. And then when they get to the line at an appointed time, and this will all start slightly before sunset, these dancers will move down towards Atlantic Avenue. These dancers will move up towards Atlantic Avenue. Same thing over here, down to Atlantic Avenue, up from Atlantic Avenue. And then the people over on this side will then start moving into Atlantic Avenue. They'll come across the bridge, again, carrying their blue lights, and they will go into Veterans Park. And everyone will line up here. It's very convenient that the high water line actually is in the parking lot right behind Veterans Park. So everybody will be lined up here, all of the dancers, and we hope to have upwards of 200 to 300 dancers involved, including the non-dancers, but the community people, movement choir. And to music, they will then do a choreography, which Dale's working on now, and they will move forward in the park all the way to the line. The idea is you're pushing back the water, pushing back the water, pushing back the water. And there will also be a banner, which is also a petition. It's going to say something like "Stand Up for the Earth." And the reason I chose that is because it brings us back to the idea of Earth Day, and it's also very inspirational. You know, now we need to stand up for the earth. Now we need to. Now it all starts with you and me, and those two lines come from a beautiful anthem that was created for the People's March in New York City in September by Neil Young. And I encourage you. I mean, I'm just getting goosebumps just even thinking about it. It's such a beautiful piece. And so at the very end, when the dancers get down here, they will turn around with their blue lights, and the band will break into a very rocking version of Neil's anthem, which starts out, "Protect the wild, tomorrow's child," and then it ends up, with "Who's going to stand up to save the earth? It all starts with you and me." So that will be the finale, and they will start coming back in and dancing to this music. So that is how it's going to work. Petition banner, that is something that Francesca Mallows devised. We think we might use that design for t-shirts instead of the banner, because Sharon is going to come up with a fantastic banner that we're now beginning to work on. So we'll use Francesca's design for the t-shirts that the dancers are going to wear. So I just wanted to thank also the Public Art Board of the City of Delray Beach, because we did a presentation for them and they agreed to fund us. So the funding, they are specifically sponsoring the water dance piece and the workshop for activist art. So I want to thank them so much for their progressive, understanding of what it is we're trying to do. So these are all the other activities that are going to be happening. Girl Scouts are going to get badges for geocaching. We're going to have videotaping by the G-Star School of the Arts. All of these elements are part of the social sculpture. Okay, it's all part of the warp and weft of this, the sculpture that is being developed. Same thing, the exhibits too. So essentially what's happening is a kind of routine Earth Festival event is being transformed into a total work of art. So I hope to see you all at the Activist Art Workshop and also at HighWaterLine Delray. And you can find out more in that website to keep up to date on what's happening. Thank you all so much.